Good evening from India. Good morning to people in the United States. Good afternoon to people in Europe and other parts of the world. My name is Rajkumar. I'm the founding Vice Chancellor of Jindal Global University. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the second day of this global virtual conference on reimagining and transforming the future of law schools and legal education. We are, of course, on the 17th thematic session of this conference on the theme Executive in Continuing Legal Education during the pandemic, role of law schools and judicial institutions. We have with us a very distinguished group of individuals, leaders of bar, as well as the bench, who have kindly agreed to participate in this conference. Let me begin by introducing Suzanne, Professor of Commercial Law at Brunel University, London, barrister at SERLE Court Chambers, London, law lecturer at the University of Oxford, United Kingdom. Pleasure to see you, Suzanne. We have with us Professor Dr. Mohammed EL-DESOUKY, Dean of the College of Law, Al-FALAH University at United Arab Emirates. My very dear friend, Mr. Siddharth Lutheran, Advocate of India, and of course, another very dear friend, Honorable Dr. Justice EMMANUEL, UGIRASHEBUJA, Judge President of the East African Court of Justice at ARUSHA, Tanzania. I am also grateful to my colleague and dear friend, Professor Dr. James NEDUMPARA, Professor at Jindal Global Law School at Open University, who has kindly consented to be the moderator of the session. I will now hand over this panel to James and will be watching all of you, hearing you behind the scenes. Come back shortly. James, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Thank you, esteemed panelists. It is my distinct pleasure to be part of this panel and to be part of this exciting conference. So I will be speaking about the continuing legal education. As we all of us know, the COVID-19 crisis has completely or fundamentally changed our lives. It has changed the legal, it has changed the economic and the social order. So the pandemic has created a virtual workforce, which performs remotely. We are also working from sometimes our respective houses. Although this ensures a sustenance against the challenges of the pandemic, working virtually has got its own limitations. Particularly in the legal field, the professional landscape is now marked by the closures of law firms, depleting clientele, cancellation of physical meetings, and appointments with clients. So in a way, virtually everyone is suffering. But at the same time, fighting this pandemic has also taught us how to reskill ourselves. We have to actually live in this world. We have to master the technology. And at the same time, we have got an opportunity to participate in this global reordering. We have to also admit the fact that the post-pandemic reconstruction would require a different kind of a skill set. It is in this context that the executive education programs become extremely important and topical. And this is an area where the legal profession should also be facing the challenges head on. Moving online provides a great set of opportunities for law schools to provide executive education programs, either through the online mode or in a blended format. The blended and the asynchronous modes of learning would facilitate the participation of legal professionals who otherwise cannot afford full-time education. Further, the skill transfer, that gap can be shortened. There are many advantages. So in this particular context, the continuing legal education is also a form of a continuous learning opportunity, and it also provides you a window of opportunity to learn new skills, learn about new ethical considerations, and it will actually allow us to grow ourselves. And in a way, we have to become a T-shaped lawyer in a fast-paced, in a fluid marketplace. So there are so many challenges involved here. I would definitely say that the lawyers, the judges, the legal academia, we are all bracing a major challenge, but at the same time, a great opportunity. And since we have got an excellent team of people, both from the academia, the legal services sector, and also from the universities. We should actually use this opportunity to get their feedback and take the valuable suggestions in reshaping our economy and the future of the legal profession. So without further ado, let me go to some of the esteemed speakers that we have with us today. I think each speaker will be given around 3 to 4 minutes to give a response to a particular topic. And I would like all the panelists to be extremely concise and respond to the questions in the period available. And if we have got a bit more time, then we can actually take a few questions from the audience as well. So let me, turn to the first speaker. I think it is Mr. Siddharth Lutheran, Senior Advocate. So this is a question relating to the legal profession. So we know that it is imperative on the part of the lawyers to continuously update their knowledge and keep themselves abreast with the developments in law and society, especially in a rapidly changing environment. My question is, how has the ongoing pandemic changed the legal industry's demands and expectation with respect to the new areas? What are the skill sets which are actually required from the legal professionals? Over to Mr. Siddharth Lutheran.
I speak as a litigating lawyer, and I must tell you, the change has been in two sets of changes. So far as law firms are concerned, the mechanism of physical filing, preparing documents, physical conferences, all of that had to change overnight. Law firms had already, most of the large law firms already had some infrastructure in place, but they had to upgrade and they had to change. The second is imbibing a balanced work from home culture, where while the office is now at home, at the same time, there is also home life or a personal life left. The lawyers, as you know, rarely have much of a personal life. The third is, so far as counsels are concerned, senior counsels and counsels, we've all had to change and develop and adapt to electronic courts, VC courts, and to electronic handling of documents, and to be able to use electronic devices effectively. We've had glitches, and I must tell you, I was one of the first, possibly the first lawyer who got an anticipatory bail from the Supreme Court on WhatsApp because the communications had failed early in March. Today, of course, things have changed a lot. But on the unfortunate part, there are a number of layoffs, as you pointed out. And a lot of people need to reinvent themselves to make themselves relevant, because there was this entire range of paralegals who was processing documents. Today, the need for the paralegals is reduced, and that sector of our industry is going to get impacted. With work from home, there was a lot of support staff that used to add up to the law firms that used to get impacted. And the worst hit is in the legal profession is the fact that trial courts took a long time to open. Now, if the trial courts and the original side courts in a country don't function, there is going to be no appellate work. The appellate court lawyers have gone through a constraint of work, but that constraint is going to continue because the impact is still being felt. So all of these are concerns which we need to deal with, and it is time. All of us have had to evolve. And as time goes by, we are all in a process of constant evolution where we are trying to meet with the new challenges. One of the biggest problems in India is you have different program softwares for different courts. So I have to switch if I'm appearing in courts. The advantage, of course, is the ability to be in different jurisdictions on the same day. I've appeared in 4 different high courts on the same day. I could have never done that in the physical world. So there are challenges and advantages. But eventually what we really need to do is reinvent ourselves in a manner where we learn skills which make us effective in a virtual world. And virtual courts are a very different ballgame. And I can tell you that now from the last 7 months.
Thank you, Mr. Luthra. I think that was a very, very valid intervention. What you said is absolutely right. Now the world has become a stage for everyone. You can operate from any part of the world at any time. So it has basically expanded the opportunities, but at the same time dwarfed the opportunities for some categories of people, which you rightly pointed out as the paralegals. The second question which I intend to ask Honorable Judge Emmanuel is something related to the functioning of the court itself. So if you heard from Mr. Siddharth Lutheran, the legal profession has become very demanding. It has become very time intensive as well. So the one question which I would like to know, given the need to be well versed with technology to engage in effective outcomes, how useful would it be for the members of the judiciary to have a short-term legal technology program? How can the judiciary leverage support of law schools to develop such executive learning programs? Over to you, Mr. Judge Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. First of all, let me appreciate Jindal Law School for having invited me to this very important topic. Jindal Law School has defined itself as an institution which thinks about tomorrow and acts today, so I really appreciate you for that. It is true that we faced an almost dramatic shift from how we used to conduct business in court, and it's not only my court, I think it's all the courts worldwide. But this was to be expected even without COVID. The courts, most of the courts at least that I have interacted with, were trying to adapt to a more virtual world in certain aspects of the court. But when COVID came, the challenges of COVID led every court to, all the courts were thrown into the deep end, and they learned how to swim in an extremely difficult world. If any of us judges, if you were asked last year whether we will work the way we work today in the virtual world, we would think that it is a fictional movie, but it's happening. However, having said that, there are quite a number of challenges which we face as judges, and which I do believe we can partner very well with law schools, because law schools can easily be able to develop curriculum which is relevant to the virtual courts. I do believe that it's incumbent upon the courts to partner very closely with the law schools. I've seen this in one of the jurisdictions, and this is in Singapore. I've seen that in Singapore, the universities, the law schools do have executive courses which they've developed, and I was privileged to attend one of those courses. So it is possible that we can emulate what has been done elsewhere, but it is also important that we learn a lot from these jurisdictions which have advanced in terms of executive curriculum for continuing legal education for judges. Let me point this one thing as I conclude. This big bang that happened to all the courts have led the courts to learn what can work virtually in a virtual manner, what should be done physically, and the difference between the two. What we've noticed is the preliminary stages of cases can be handled in the virtual world, even beyond COVID. That I believe the courts should continue doing so for purposes of efficiency. But there are certain aspects of the sessions of courts which it is difficult to in future beyond COVID continue handling in a virtual manner. The advocates here will tell you that cross-examination is not necessarily effectively done on a platform such as this. I do believe that if courts get together with the law schools, they can look at the most appropriate sessions which can be handled in a virtual manner and what can be handled in a physical manner. Because I do believe that COVID-19 and challenges that come with it are an outlier. I don't believe that it will continue like this, but let's start COVID-19 and its challenges as is an eye-opener on what can be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice. I think you mentioned some important points. This kind of a blended approach that we use now in the case of legal education can be a solution with respect to the courtroom functioning as well. I'm also very glad to know that some of the universities like Singapore have taken an initiative in this particular regard. So now let me turn to Professor Susan. My question is actually with respect to the legal education sector. So now most of the lawyers have got ample amount of free time, so they can join a large number of online programs. So my specific question is that, given this particular opportunity, that physical campuses have been temporarily shut down, how can law schools leverage technology to provide legal professionals easy and flexible remote access to executive education programs? At the same time, what are the various limitations of online learning, especially in relation to short duration programs? Over to you, Professor Ram.
I speak partly as a practicing member of the bar, as a legal practitioner, but also as a professor of commercial law in an academic environment. So I bring a multidisciplinary perspective to these issues. And what I see is a growing need for there to be that nexus between the academic classroom and the practice of law. And recognizing some of the observations that we've mentioned earlier, that inevitably there is a huge part of the legal profession that is recognized as becoming redundant, and not just for the interim, but causing a real question about future sustainability and business models. And that's where I think it's very important for there to be transferable skills that are useful in the legal sector, but also elsewhere. When it comes to online learning, and I speak here from a number of initiatives I've been involved in, I teach at traditional bricks and mortar universities such as Oxford, but also with the Open University in the United Kingdom, which in the early 70s pioneered itself on distance learning. So they had something of a head start in the sense of already online learning was within their DNA. And the message we take away from this experience must be that this is an opportunity, but ultimately those who are not agile enough to respond will fall by the wayside. Online learning, can it replicate the experience of physical? Well, I must say I had some skepticisms at the outset. I had a 5-day program I was supposed to deliver physically in April, and within a week transformed this, working with a technology provider to allow for that to be delivered through a virtual platform. That involved virtual breakouts and looking at how you can simulate a physical environment. Yes, it has its other challenges, but it is not as straightforward as putting a PowerPoint on a screen and delivering it in a webinar format. But I have been inspired and motivated about what is possible. But what has been really interesting for me on the nexus between academia and the real life practice that this has indicated is that the training techniques that we've seen, the education techniques, are actually deployable in the real world to resolve disputes. And with the courts involved in social distancing, with the stop-start that has been experienced around the world, this has been a focus on alternative dispute resolution, which the merits have been recognised for many years. And this is an opportunity now to really realise and deliver on that and invest in that as a practice area. I have seen a rise in my own mediation practice. My online arbitration practice, where not only are we teaching people how to mediate and become arbitrators through an online forum, but we are actually mediating and arbitrating those disputes. And that eases the backlog on the courts. So I would like to see a synthesis between education, training, but also practical deployment of these techniques through real life dispute resolution. So it's gone from outside of the classroom and into the real world.
Thank you, Susan. I think, thank you, Susan. It is an excellent point. What you said is that the law schools which are not agile or who are unable to actually come out with innovative programs of who fail to adapt will actually fall by the wayside. I mean, that is something not only true for the law schools, but for every profession, including the courts. But I think there are major challenges. Actually, your emphasis on the synthesis is extremely important, given the fact that there is a significant disconnect between what the law schools do at the moment and the professions do. Because when people actually graduate out of the law schools, that is the end of education for them. So this is a significant opportunity as well. Let me again turn to Dr. Siddharth Lutheran. This is with respect to the continuing legal education. Given the fact that the continuing legal education enables lawyers to constantly evolve in knowledge, competence, and efficiency, which in turn improves legal professional standards and also to increase public confidence and legal professionals and the judiciary as a whole. So what do you think about the significance of the continuing legal education in the context of India and the Indian legal profession?
Well, you know, the Bar Council of India, which is our regulatory body, came out with a Directorate of Continuing Legal Education, and it has not achieved its objective. So what is necessary is for the universities such as yours to step in, because today we are at a crossroads. You know, we are at that stage where the legal profession is now having to deal with a marriage between technology and practical life. There was a lot of things that we did in the physical world. The simplest thing was, you know, using a vehicle, going to a government office, going to get a property registered, the most basic essential needs. Now, all those basic actions which we were doing from morning till night have now been reduced to the virtual world, and therefore there are regimes that will need to be developed and legal mechanisms will need to be developed to deal with these new relationships and the new formation of these relationships. There are great opportunities. Companies which have adapted have come out with technologies. Today we are on Zoom, and that's something which nobody was using. It was unheard of. VCs was not only inaccessible, it was rarely used. Nobody wanted to do VCs in the legal profession. We all wanted physical meetings, clients as well as lawyers. We never thought we'd do any VC courts. All of that has changed, and according to me, it is important for continuing legal education to address the application of technology to practical life and the legal opportunities that arise out of this. This is essential for us to be able to better advise our clients, as also to develop legal regimes while governments act, because legislation is going to take time. Meanwhile, the advisory work, the documentation work, the disputes that arise out of this are going to be, unfortunately, immense. At least, well, great opportunities for lawyers, not necessarily for the clients. And that's the focus. And that is a niche area which only law schools can achieve. And that will, according to me, is the new barrier which you have to cross.
Yeah, I think, thank you. That is a valid point. From a simple, economic assessment, the new virtual courtroom hearings and other things open up a significant amount of opportunities and at the same time cut down the transaction cost. So you don't have to physically travel to a place in order to have a meeting. All these things can be done virtually. That is a significant economic efficiency. But at the same time, I agree with that. We have to be nimble. The law schools will have to actually provide qualitative improvement in the education as well. I think these are challenges. Now, let me again turn to Justice Emmanuel. I think, so we have been going through this pandemic, and the pandemic has opened up a large number of new age issues. For instance, cyber fraud, data privacy issues. So some of these issues will definitely occupy the time of the courtrooms in the post-corona world. Given the transition in the subject matter expertise required by certain lawyers, Justice Emmanuel, what areas in your opinion should be the focus of developing executive education programs?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for that very important question. You are right in pointing out that certain issues have arisen, or certain disputes, crimes, if you may, such as cyber fraud, data privacy issues, cyber-related disputes generally have arisen as a result of the use of this technology. I do agree with you that these are the issues that the law schools have to pay attention to. But even within these issues, what is more important for the judiciary is how do you deal with the evidence as a judge when it's presented to you? As you will all agree, these issues involve a lot of science. So it is also natural that sometimes there will be requirement of expert witnesses before the courts. So it is very important that judges are trained. I know judges don't like that term of being trained, but this is the new world that we live in. But I do believe that judges should be trained on how to deal with sciences in courts, and when this science comes in form of evidence, and how to deal with the expert evidence that comes with that. This is very important. So for us on the bench, the most important part is dealing with evidence, and this is what the law schools, when developing this executive continuing legal education, should pay attention to.
Yeah. So thank you. I think let me actually recall a statement which is attributed to Winston Churchill. I would like to learn, but I wouldn't like to be taught. I think this is especially true with judges, given the fact that the challenges will be extremely, I think, new in the future. Judges will have to learn a lot of things. And law schools and other executive education programs shouldn't actually call, I think, call them a classroom, maybe an interactive opportunity. So there are various ways in which we can interact. So now let me ask one question.
Just because you cited someone, I also want to cite someone in 2 seconds, and this is Alvin Toffler, who said that he's an American author. I like this quote. He said that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn and relearn. So yes.
I think that is well. That is well said. That is well said. I really appreciate that comment. One more question to Professor Suzanne. So this is with respect to the executive legal education. Given the fact that the average batch size of executive programs in law could include people with varied backgrounds and attributes, varying professional backgrounds, in what manner do professors develop a teaching methodology which can benefit all categories of people, irrespective of their professional backgrounds or diversity, including their cultural background?
So the topic of diversity and inclusion is a huge one, which I can't possibly do justice to in the 3 minutes that I have, but is something which has really come to the fore in these times. And I think we need to look beyond just issues of culture and the more obvious diversity metrics such as gender, race and others, but also looking at socioeconomic factors as well. And I think that's where when we are all reliant on technology, the patchy covering of fast high-speed internet access is a palpable concern. And I can see that resonates in India, but it is also a phenomenon in the United States. And it is not confined to jurisdictions that may have other income disparities. In the United Kingdom, there are huge efforts to try to achieve much greater rural coverage. So I think we have to come at this not by taking as a given that everybody is going to be able to get online at the same time. Some households will be sharing one mobile phone for all learners, whether they are school children or whether they are in tertiary education. So I think we need to get real that some of our students may be very privileged, but others may be in households where they are sharing devices with a few hours a day. And I think that brings us to think about how can we adopt a more blended approach here, which caters for that. And I think the mix between both the synchronous, real-time exchange and asynchronous, which allows people to do things at their own pace. I've seen desert-based education systems in recognition of that, which we can be inspired by from the Middle East, with people studying at their own pace. And we're seeing more of this through educational tech. I was due to travel to Hong Kong in the summer to deliver a 10-day program to judges and others in the public sector. It was progressively delayed because we thought at some time we'll do this physically, but ultimately we ended up doing it virtually. And you will think, that is an 8-hour time difference. How can that be managed? And it can be when people want to do it, but it requires flexibility on all sides. We mentioned the point about an inclusive curriculum and looking at different subject areas. I think here one important subject area we're missing is the need for education around emotional intelligence. And I don't call that soft skills, but the techniques that really do distinguish people and empower them and let them improve their life lot. And that's where these challenging times have focused all of us on the need not just for intellectual resilience, but emotional resilience as well. And I believe these techniques will be the key to social advancement and diversity in the future. And I'm going to end with a quote here to mirror the quotes that have been given by my eminent colleagues here. But I must say this is more from the world of movies than it is from law and politics. And you might have viewed the Game of Thrones, which is an export from closer to my home. If you haven't, don't worry about that. But that talks about chaos as a ladder. And there's an iconic line in that series where one is told that chaos is indeed a ladder. Many try to climb it and they will fail, and they never get to try again, and the fall breaks them. But some are given a chance to climb, but they refuse. And I think this is the biggest challenge for us in diversity now, which is accepting a huge attainment gap. But this is an opportunity, but we must not disillusion ourselves and say that before we can do any of this, we need to sort out the issue of access to technology in the first place.
Thank you. I think, thank you, Susan. It is an excellent observation. You also pointed out the need for synchronous as well as asynchronous kind of learning. In a place like India, we know that even most of the lawyers do not have a private place for themselves to sit and attend these kind of online programs. I'm not talking about even their ability to pay for the programs. So, these are very major challenges, the diversity And of course, I think the lack of ability to even absorb, these are major concerns actually. Let me again turn to Justice for a comment with respect to the legal profession. So the question is that given the nature of learning in executive legal education, and that this learning will actually go online, how can we engage with the distinguished leaders of the judiciary to add more practical experience to the learning outcomes? So in short, how can we make sure that the leaders of judiciary, either sitting judges or maybe retired judges, can actually contribute to the practical learning experience?
Thank you. Thank you very much once again for that question. And you're right in pointing out that there is always a way that either sitting judges or retired ones could contribute to the training of new judges and as well as other people in the legal sector. I do believe that there should be development of systems for judges and senior practitioners to spend periods of time as visiting academic fellows at university law schools. Such programs have been in existence in certain law schools. I can name of one that is at the University of Hawaii, where senior judges are invited. I participated in it as a visiting judge, and I attended the university for a week. I was provided with office accommodation and gave a couple of lectures, including public lectures, participated in staff seminar, and otherwise engaged in informal discussions with staff and students. It was a very rewarding and enjoyable experience for me. And I do believe that it's a two-way process. I also do believe that there should be development of a system under which academics could be visitors to particular courts or particular judges' chambers for a suitable period of a week or so. The visitor would have the opportunity to observe court cases and, subject to appropriate protocols, to talk with judges and associates about questions arising in the cases. The protocols obviously would have to be formulated with some care to deal with issues of confidentiality and conflict interests. So I do believe that there's an opportunity here for both the judges to participate in legal law schools, as well as for academic to also come to courts, as long as certain protocols are observed, given the work of the courts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that is again a valid observation, because this presents an opportunity for judges, students, and faculty members to interact, actually learn from each other, and basically facilitate a greater interaction and knowledge creation. So these are all positive things. Maybe in this context, I would like to ask one more question to Mr. Siddharth Lutheran. So given the fact that the legal profession is going through a difficult period, especially in the context of COVID-19, and that many professionals have got an uncertain future, what could be your advice? What could be your take on the youngsters who may be joining these executive education programs, or the people who would like to join the program in the future? How will this category of people benefit from this program? And what is your general advice, how the legal profession as a whole will evolve after COVID-19?
My eminent colleagues have said, one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is that we've had a lot more time on our hands, which we never had in the past. So the transit time, the physical time, all of that has been reduced. Professionals do have time on their hands. The initial phase of the pandemic was a phase of confusion when we didn't know how long it would last. But speaking for myself, I don't see things settling down till maybe middle or the end of next year. And therefore, this is a very crucial time for legal professionals to reach out and hone their skills, to improve themselves. We are missing out on crucial courtroom moments. A lot of our learning is in court. A lot of our learning is in our offices with interaction with our colleagues. So that has to be replicated, and the only way that can be replicated or the gap can be filled up is by reaching out and accessing executive legal education programs, because that will bridge the gap. That will also enable us to hone our skills and to use this period as a period of development. This is not a lost time. We're not going to get this time again. For those of us who survived the pandemic, this time is not going to come back, but this is a time when you can invent and reinvent yourselves, as the judge said, to learn, learn, and relearn. And for that, it is for us to work towards that self. We have to move on. We have to come to terms with this pandemic and move forward. And if we have opportunities like this, I mean, today I'll tell you, I've taught in Jindal Law University as an adjunct professor. I taught elsewhere. Now that's the teaching part. But I'm looking for programs where you will teach me. Are you going to do that is my question.
Mr. Moderator, I think you are muted.
James, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that thing. So thank you, Mr. Siddharth Lutheran. So we have got the fourth speaker, Professor Mohamed EL-DESOUKY. He is the Dean of the College of Law at AL-FALAH University. So Professor, I have just one question to you. Given the fact that most of the campuses in many jurisdictions are completely shut at this moment, how do you view the evolution of this continuing legal education as an opportunity for law schools around the world and also within your own jurisdiction?
Yes, Doctor, at the beginning, I'm sorry for joining lating because some unexpected errors. I would like to thank you, thank your university about this conference. This is the topic of the hour, as well as inviting me and my colleague to this conference. According to the e-learning, most of the universities used e-learning before the crisis of COVID-19, but especially under this crisis, all the university uses these facilities not only as e-learning, but also as a distance learning. Maybe at the beginning, we are all, I'm sure, faced a lot of problem with the students, with lecture, exams, but I'm sure now all the faculties or the colleges all around the world are so familiar with these facilities. Now, for example, we are in UAE. The distance learning will continue at least this semester, and the next semester, second semester, we don't know up till now what will happen. But anyway, we suppose we will continue as e-learning and also, distance learning. We are ready. All the world are ready now, students and all in structure also.
So
yes, but the thing makes me optimistic that this crisis now make us, for example, join at this conference without leave our countries. So, I wish to visit India actually, but facilitate this join this conference. What I mean in the next period, it will be a very, very a good opportunity to collaborate between colleges to, for example, providing joint academic program and awarding also double degrees. I think that will happen. Most of the countries they cannot maybe like or feel uncomfortable with the distance learning. Now, I think most of the countries can allow now this kind of learning. it's not يعني the quality is we are sure the quality is very يعني نقدر نقول يعني is effective, not bad, يعني very good. I am optimistic about that. Also at the courts here in UAE, especially in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we as a court is using the distance, for example, the sessions now we are using it. يعني can I say the courts before the crisis and now practicing the lawsuit and remote sessions. The crisis already affected all the sectors in the world, but in the next also there are some يعني good things will happen, as I told you. I wish I answered the question.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a very useful observation. It is a fact that even before COVID-19, a large number of educational institutions had collaborated for providing online programs, twin or dual degree programs and other programs. So as the necessity is the mother of all adaptation, I'm sure these kind of activities will flourish in the future. We have got a few set of questions from the participants. So maybe I will actually read out one of the questions. The first question is, as all courts have gone online, how can the judicial institutions in the present pandemic times extend practical training opportunities to the students pursuing executive courses who may miss out on valuable internship experiences? I think anyone can actually answer, take this question.
One of the biggest problems that we are having is for young lawyers and law students is the inability to be present in court. And that has led to, a lot of our learning would happen watching good lawyers, great professionals performing in court. You may not be in that case, but you would learn a lot from listening and hearing others and the interaction you would have and the exchange between judges and lawyers. The virtual courts, barring few high courts, do not allow access to third parties. There are, because of technological constraints, barring high courts like Uttaranchal High Court in Nainital in India, most of the other high courts, only the parties can get a specified number of links. Initially, there was only one link per matter or 2 links on each side. Today, of course, that's increased. But interns and law clerks, young lawyers, they do not have access. Even lawyers and law firms are not able to give access. Of course, we're trying to add and give people online internships as far as possible, but that's not the same experience. So the great opportunity that judges can give young lawyers and law students and courts can give is to give them the opportunity to do online internships. Of course, there are security issues and privacy issues which will have to be taken into consideration, because earlier the physical files used to be at the judges' chambers where they would be viewed by the law clerks and the interns, and now these files will have to travel electronically. But having said that, that would be a great mechanism for young lawyers and law students to understand the functionality of courts in the VC era, as also be able to watch and learn and experience from courts.
Thank you.
Maybe I can add to that. Yeah, thank you very much. I think as judges, as someone who sits at least on the bench, the president of the court, I think we should consider this, that part of what we should do as our duty is to train young lawyers. So we should take that as one of the duties of in our profession. So there's nothing that stops judges, and I've done so even during this COVID period, to have a one-on-one with some of the law clerks to explain to them what is happening, despite the fact that a lot of functions have been put electronic. So it is incumbent upon us to know that in our profession, in the legal profession, the most important aspect of training is apprenticeship. So we should take that into consideration and find time amidst all the challenges that we have, and time to train these lawyers. But I may speak of the experience of my court. We have allowed third parties to be able to follow the cases virtually, including law students. And the reason being that the philosophy behind this is that the courts should be open. So even if they, as they go virtual, I do believe that the IT people can help and do allow as many participants as possible. And at the beginning, it was a bit difficult. So we allowed media houses to be part of the processes of the court and be able to broadcast. And then later on, we went to live streaming of the hearings, and it has really helped a lot. And I do believe we'll continue improving on this. But taking in mind that in our legal profession, one of the most important things that you can do is to mentor others who will take over from the positions that we sit in today.
Thank you. Thank you, Justice Emmanuel. I think you made some excellent points. So, there are difficulties in maybe live streaming the court sessions, maybe in different jurisdictions. And the second point is that, okay, I will definitely give the chance to Susan as well. So Susan, would you like to say something?
I think I just wanted to just wrap up on the conversation earlier with some perspectives from the UK and the challenge of open access, but also restrictions on making hearings available online isn't to be underestimated. Some of the innovations of our UK Supreme Court with live streaming of hearings have been very inspiring even before COVID, but certainly my own professional practice has been affected by similar tensions that Mr. LUTHRA has mentioned around other cases, particularly where there are reporting restrictions on trials. So I think bringing that into the education dimension, what it tells us is that if we impart learning just by telling people what to do or getting them to read something, they're going to absorb a very small part of it. If you demonstrate it, they will gain a lot more. But giving them the opportunity to get on their feet gives them a much more valuable experience. But one of the great benefits that we have with technology and recording is actually playing back somebody's performance to them and getting them to see how they perform can help with some of the advocacy techniques. And I've certainly been working with that over the last 9 months with a course on practical skills in dispute resolution, which was one of the gifts perhaps that COVID had given to us in allowing for that much more kinesthetic experience with a body demonstrating and then playing back to the student. This is what the observer sees of you, and that is something we can do in an online environment, which will help with advocacy skills.
Susan, thank you. I want to take one more question. So this is actually a question with respect to teaching, and since you are a teacher, my question is to Susan. Is the Socratic method of teaching better apt for students who want to work in judicial services rather than normal textbook teaching? How do we incorporate this method in executive legal programs?
Well, I speak here as both an academic and a practitioner, because ultimately looking at teaching methods and development of skills ultimately has to look to what are we going to do with this, and that may not necessarily be practicing law or being a member of the judiciary. But if we're trying to evolve our current learning techniques, one key area is around legal reasoning. And I think that's where traditional didactic skills of looking at rules, looking at learning and dispensing knowledge are not the skills that are highly valued in a courtroom because of the need to engage as much of that with evidence. And I think that is where these interfaces need to be looked at, and looking at a blended approach, unpacking legal rules, intersposing evidence, and enhancing skills of reasoning and equipping lawyers for the future, not just with knowledge, and rewarding them for memory skills, but rewarding them on their ability to harness information and reason in a coherent way. And I think that is our biggest challenge for the future, because those are skills which I believe are undervalued in the current education system, but are highly valued in the real practice of law. And translating that is our next big goal.
Thank you. So thank you, Susan. In fact, we do not have much of time. We are nearly running short of time. So as a concluding remark, what I can say is that we have all become resilient now. I mean, had this kind of an online education program been offered 1 year earlier in 2019, there would not have been too many takers for it. And most of us sitting here and exchanging our views as part of this, this conference would not have even learned how to use the Skype, or maybe Zoom for that matter. So all of us are very familiar with the technology now. Judges are familiar with the WhatsApp, and they're also familiar with all the technologies. I think even people in the 60s and 80s, 70s, the senior citizens, they have learned the trick of the game. So these are the positive things. I think the spillover benefits will be huge. So I feel that Professor Rajkumar's vision of continuing this legal education program and taking it at a very big level, at a huge level, has got huge benefit for the society. I teach in a program which has got numerous students, and I don't think that any one of them could have attended this kind of a legal education without this online platform. So we are sitting in the midst of an opportunity. There are many challenges, and we have to be adapt and adaptable. So let me actually turn the phone, I think the Zoom over to Professor Rajkumar for the concluding session and for winding up the session.
And thank you so much for all of you. I particularly want to thank my very dear friend, Mr. Siddharth Lutheran, for sparing time from his busy schedule. I call him, in many ways, the non-billable hours that he has given to us for being part of this panel. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for your very thoughtful reflections. Thank you, Emmanuel. So good to see you. And of course, we also briefly had our other speaker, Professor MOHAMED, and thank you so much, James, as well. In fact, one of the things that many of you reflected is in relation to what extent executive and continuing legal education through these platforms can go beyond the COVID-19 crisis. This is the new normal. In fact, this morning, Honorable Dr. Justice Chandrachud, Judge of the Supreme Court of India, when he delivered the Constitution Day lecture, he quite passionately talked about the fact that some of the fundamental challenges of access to justice can be addressed using some of the technological new age technology that has been brought to bear in the access to justice delivery mechanisms. So with those words, once again, thank you very much. Be safe. We will be quickly taking a break and then move into the 18th thematic session on potentialities of the pandemic, industry, professional, and academic collaborations. We have Honorable Mr. Justice Matthew Cooper, Judge of the Supreme Court of New York, Professor Jayant Krishnan from Indiana University, Mr. Nishit Desai, founder of Nishit Desai Associates, Professor Idiko Maskar, head of the law school from Columbia, Professor Aman Lahavi, Dean from at the Interdisciplinary Center Herzliya in Israel, will be joining us shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.